Hi, welcome to episode 431 of the Corner of Knit and Tea. My name is Laura. I'm also known as Fluffy Kira on Twitter and Instagram. I blog over at thecornerofknitandtea.com, and that's where this episode and every episode show notes will be. I have an Etsy shop called The Corner of Knit and Tea, where I sell my handspun yarn and patterns. And right now we are in the middle of Tour de Fleece, which runs concurrently with Tour de France. And so we have a Ravelry group called The Corner of Knit and Tea, and there is discussion in there. And then we also have a group on Facebook where discussion is happening and photos are being shared. And there is a link to that in the description box below if you would like to join us. So hi, how are you? It is Monday, July 10th. And it was a lovely weekend. Lots of fun stuff. The weather was a little bit cooler, so it was very nice, actually. It was in the 80s. I'm coming to you from just outside of Kansas City in, well, technically both Kansas and Missouri. I live on the Kansas side, so I live sort of in the southwest corner of the city. And so things here are just moving right along. I hope you had a wonderful week last week. I did lots and lots and lots of spinning and not a ton of knitting, but I got up a little bit of gumption to work on a couple projects. So I do have a few things to show you, and then lots of spinning and a little chat about what sort of is coming up next for me. So I hope that you're ready to roll. I don't have a lot to chat about, but so let's get started. Today I am drinking Little Miss Spice Girl, which is a tea that comes from Scotland from Hetty's Tea Room. I picked it up when I was there a few years ago. It says posh, dark, and ginger all in one cup. It is a Assam black tea with ginger, cinnamon, cloves, and cardamom, and it is absolutely lovely. And I am drinking it in my Jenny the Potter mug. These are sunflowers, and she had a bunch of, well, this one is a sunflower. I guess some of them are. This was when she started some of her stamping, and sunflower is the state flower of Kansas. You can see them when you drive across Kansas in the summer, and so I thought it was kind of fitting, and yeah. So let's get started. I do actually have knitting progress to show you. So the most progress that I've made is that I actually finished the body on my weekender. As you know, if you've been watching for the last several weeks, my knitting group sort of decided to start an informal knit along. A bunch of one member really wanted to knit a weekender, and then a couple of us sort of jumped on the bandwagon, and then a couple other folks are not knitting weekender, but they're knitting another summer sweater and sort of calling it as part of the knit along. It's very funny because, of course, it's an informal knit along. Some of us are just knitting the same pattern. Many people are not knitting the same pattern. There's no prizes. There's no deadline. There's no anything. It was just like, hey, you're making this. I want to make that. Anyway, so Weekender is a pattern by Andrea Mowry, who is Drea Renee Knits, and it is for a kind of oversized pullover. It's knit in the round from the bottom up, and it's a reverse stockinette stitch with a couple stockinette and slip stitch details, and it is just kind of supposed to be sort of a like boyfriend sweater or kind of a loose, comfy, cozy thing to wear on the weekends. And while everybody kind of had their yarns picked out, I thought about it for a while, and then I realized I actually had some handspun that I figured I would have almost enough, just enough, somewhere around there. I'm still not 100% sure. I'm running on the I'll have enough to do the sleeves that I want, and I'm hoping I won't have any left over because then I could have made the body longer, but we'll see. So this was handspun that I actually spun with a different project in mind. And so I spun it kind of in long runs of color. I didn't do a lot of breaking things up, and so it has given me a sweater that is kind of sort of striped. And what I had was I had a patchwork kit from Hello Yarn, which is a bag of a pound of fiber. And what I cannot remember is actually, truthfully, what I cannot remember is whether it was a patchwork kit, which is bits and bobs of leftover fiber. Adrienne Hello Yarn runs a huge subscription club and then updates occasionally in her shop for everyone. And she has bits and bobs left over as she is dyeing braids. And, you know, maybe she'll have a foot left over from one braid or 2 feet left over from something else. And she kind of puts them all this all these bits in the bag. They're not actually seconds fiber. They are, but they are bits and pieces from other things that she's dyed, or they might be test dyes or those kinds of things. So she'll put a pound of those in a bag together. Now, sometimes she'll also, she'll have test dyed a bunch of fiber, or she'll have a bunch of leftovers of just one colorway, and she'll put all that in a bag, and it's still sort of considered a patchwork kit. They still come in about a pound. What I cannot remember is exactly what this was. But the fibers are all kind of similar colors. And then I found a fifth braid. So I think it was a pound, which is 16 ounces. And then I found one more braid and that I thought kind of went nicely with the other braids, although it had a few different colors, and you'll be able to tell where those are. And so I kind of spun all of that up, I think last year for Tour de Fleece, and was planning to use it to knit myself a chicken. I knit chicken footstools for the City Girl Farm. If you are new here, I'll put a link in the show notes about that. Anyway, so I was, and if you've worked for them for long enough and on a regular basis, you get to make your own chicken. And so I had spun this up thinking I would use it for my chicken, and then when I started knitting it, it didn't work quite right. So I had this, I think about 950 to 1,000 yards of my hand spun, and it was, I had spun it intending it to be thicker, so it's definitely like a worsted or heavy worsted weight, and so I thought it would work perfectly for the weekender. So that's a lot of talk to say. I actually finished the body on my weekender late last night, so all I have left are the sleeves. So this is my sweater, and this is where I am so far. Sorry, I have lots of bits and pieces. So this is what I have so far. As you can tell, most of the fiber that I had was kind of in the oranges, reds, and pinks. The braid that I added had some darker colors in it, and you can see that there's some dark purple here, kind of purple and lavender. And then up at the top, I also had a lot of blues in there. This is the back of the sweater, and I don't know how much you can see it, but there's like quite a bit of blue there. And then I had this section that ended up right at the upper ribbing that also is quite blue. So you can see it's kind of an interesting conglomerate of handspun, and because I tried to keep the long color runs together, I really did get kind of subtle stripes. Now, because all of this is in reverse stockinette, it really actually looks like it kind of blends together, and a lot of times you can see like one color blend into the next. So right here, I ended up breaking it. Actually, I will tell you, the blue was right here. Because it had kind of the yellow and orange and blue at the top, and then the blue here. And what I ended up doing was, because I didn't like the way the blue looked here, it looked really abrupt, so I actually swapped it, and it still looks a little bit abrupt, but that's more like the pinks and purples, and then, but you can see there's lots of blue there. So this is the finished body on my weekender, and now I just need to do sleeves. So that is what I have going on. I'm very excited about this. I'm going to put it on the mannequin and take a few photos today, and I'll take some close-ups because I don't think you can see the gorgeous colors of the handspun in quite all of their glory on this video. I guess that's not too bad. And I love the back too. The back section has like all kinds. So it's just kind of a crazy bit of handspun, and I think this is just going to be a nice oversized sweater. I will say a few notes on sizing and my knitting. I am knitting it per pattern. The things that I have done slightly differently or whatnot. Normally I would be knitting a size medium, and this pattern calls for 10 inches of ease, which I decided was a little bit too much for my taste. So a medium would result in an overall 48-inch bust finished size, and I'm a 38-inch bust, so I actually went down. So I'm knitting the size small, and that results in a 46-inch bust. So I think I should have a couple inches on each side. It shouldn't be form-fitting, but it won't be quite as oversized as it was in the pattern. The only other modification that I have made is that I knit the body just a little bit shorter, and that is because I was worried about the yardage that I had. It calls to knit from the hem to the underarm. My size called for 15 inches, and I knit between 13 and 13 and a half. I do think this is going to grow a little bit, and it is somewhat heavy, and so I think because it's not woolen spun, it's definitely worsted spun. So I am hoping that I will get a little bit of extra length out of it, and I'm hoping that I won't have yarn left over, because as I told you, I would really like to I would really like to be justified in shortening it so that I could have full-length sleeves. So I finished the first two. So I spun a bunch of this on my, or applied a bunch of this on my mini spinner. So I have 8-ounce balls. I know, that's funny. And so basically I have one skein left, and I have not wound it up yet, but I have one skein to work on the sleeves, and this is the skein that's left. And so my plan is to, and it's a lot more of the same. I'm thinking this was a patchwork kit because there are so many different colors in this. I don't think this was just one colorway. I think it was a bunch of colorways. So I'm going to go through, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to wind this up, and then I'm going to divide it into two so that I can have two equal length sleeves, whatever those lengths should be. I'm almost positive that I'm going to get full length sleeves out of this because this is at least 7 ounces. So it's got to be a ton of yardage. I don't know exactly how much because I didn't take a lot of notes because I was working on a non-traditional project with this. Anyway, so I should have enough to finish my sleeves, and that is what I will work on next. And so I'm really, really excited about that. And I think my next couple projects, I would like to make my next couple projects in handspun. I do have some projects that I need to make for other things, but for myself, I'm thinking about doing a few more handspun projects because knitting with my handspun is just amazing. And actually this is really fun because, like I said, I intentionally tried to spin this thicker, which is kind of hard for me to do, but I intentionally tried to spin this thicker and longer color runs. And so this yarn is really squishy and a pleasure to work with. So I'm looking at some other patterns that could easily be done in handspun, whether it's handspun that I already have spun or something that I could spin up. So I have some ideas. My guess is I won't get to them quite till fall because I have a few more things that I need to do between now and like September, October. But I know that towards the end of August, the sweater bug will bite me again because fall's on the way. And so maybe I'll work on something like that. So that is my weekender, and I'm really, really enjoying that. It's funny because some nights I don't want to work on it because I don't want it to end. Like, I'm enjoying knitting it so much that I'm trying to stretch it out for a really long time, which I know seems very odd and very counterintuitive. Usually I'm all about the finished product and I just want it to be done. But this time around, for some reason, I just want to savor this. And so some nights I'm like, I don't want to work on it because I want it to last longer. I know, it's really stupid, isn't it? So the second project that I'm working on is a pair of 2 at a time socks. I'm knitting from the toe up and on magic loop. And this is exactly the same as the last pair of socks that I knit on this podcast because I'm making a second version of the knit that I just completed. The pattern is called 2 at a time toe up magic loop or something like that. And it is from Knit Picks. It is a free pattern. You can download it for free on Ravelry, or you can go to the Knit Picks website and download it. The link in my show notes goes to the Knit Picks website. I try not to link to Ravelry anymore because I know that provides some people with problems, but you can always just cut and paste the title of the pattern into the Ravelry search and it should come up for you there. Because almost everything that I don't think I've used a pattern that's not available on Ravelry in a while. These are 2 at a time toe up socks, and I have been using them with Zen Yarn Garden's new double-stranded sock cakes. And so what this is I guess I don't know for sure whether this came from a sock blank. I would like to think so. So Zen Yarn Garden got started dyeing sock blanks, and they made them 2 at a time so that you could work socks they were dyeing blanks that came double-stranded. Normally when you dye a blank, it's just a single strand, and then you can wind it up into a cake and work with it from there, or you can work with it off the cake. One of the nice things about a double-stranded cake is that you literally can have 2 socks that match each other, 2 identical socks. And particularly when you're talking about gradients, that's really cool because you dye the whole gradient on the blank and then you actually have 2 strands that are dyed absolutely identically, and you can knit socks. And I did finish a pair of socks just a couple weeks ago. It's also on my Instagram, which was a gradient. So then the next thing that they wanted to show was that it could sort of be done with any skein. It didn't have to be a gradient. It could be any one of their colorways. And so I don't know that this colorway is named yet. But this is the next cake that they sent me, and it's got blacks and browns and grays in it, and it's really fun. It's kind of a neutral. I think it would be fine. It would be especially great for someone who didn't really like wild flashy socks. So this is it's the double-stranded cake, so you can see there are 2 strands here, and I can basically knit identical socks from this. So a couple caveats here. One is that for some reason, my socks are not coming out exactly identical. For some reason, I have like slightly more of one that I've used than the other. So the strands are identical, but they're ending up in slightly different placements. I don't know if it's that my tension was weird. Since I'm knitting these 2 up, since I'm knitting these toe up 2 at a time, I cast on at the same time. I thought I cast on at the same exact spot. I don't know. So these are the socks as they currently stand. Let me get all the various strands out of the way. These are the socks as they currently stand. Like I said, the pattern is a toe up. It starts with Judy's Magic Cast On, which is kind of a figure 8 cast on the toes that creates an invisible seam there. You can't tell it's a seam. It looks like they just kind of both come out of the center there. And then I just went ahead and worked on the socks, and you can see down at the bottom my stitch count was such that it would kind of be variegated, and then for some reason at 60 stitches it just decided it wanted to pool. And so they are a little bit fraternal. You can see that they don't exactly 100% match, in the sense that like the pooling didn't start in exactly the same spot on both. I'm not sure why that was, but you can see that they are going to basically match. And I think when it's something like this, I'm not sure that it matters. I'm not sure that it looks that different. So, and here's the other side. It's kind of the same thing, where you have kind of variegate and pinstripes at the bottom, and then they are pooling or flashing in these kind of helical stripes. So I'm going to continue to knit these for a few more inches, and then start the heel flap and gusset. And again, that is per the Knit Picks pattern. It is a little bit different than what I've seen before. I talked about that last week, I think, when I shared, or 2 weeks ago, when I shared the finished Radiant socks. The heel flap actually goes under the heel and then up the back of the heel. And so I am knitting these just like the last ones. I basically am doing everything the same. I'm going to use the same measurements for the foot, the same cast on, the same number of total stitches, and I will just work these through to completion. And this weekend I am heading up to Chicago to see my family. My sister lives up there with my niece and nephew, and then my parents are actually flying in as well. And so I'm going to take these with me and hope that I get lots of good work on these. We're driving up. I am not driving. My husband is driving, so I will be able to knit. The other thing that I know that we're going to do is if you are in Chicago, if you live in Chicago environs, every summer, my sister is part of well, technically it's her theater company, she founded it, called Midsummer Flight, and they do Shakespeare in Chicago's parks. And the play that they're doing this year is Cymbeline, which is one of Shakespeare's lesser known titles, but it has a lot of the intrigue and a lot of the plot points that kind of fall in all of his. There's some mistaken identity, there's some cavorting in the forest, there's a play within a play, just lots of different of Shakespeare's themes. And she will be in various parks for a 6 or 8 week run. They just started this past weekend, and they will be running through, I think, mid to late August. And they're in different parks each weekend, so you can check it out at Midsummer, MIDSOMMER Flight, but it's SOMMER, midsummerflight.com. And if you are interested, the performances are free. They do pass around a basket for donations, but generally performances start, I think, around 6 o'clock in the evening, because they're in the park. They don't bring in extra lights. So they start a little on the early side. You can bring a picnic dinner, you can bring your chairs and blankets. Anyway, so I think we're going to be going this weekend, so I'm going to bring my socks with me because I can knit them during the performance. So that is the other thing that I have in progress. So the other thing I briefly worked on, I didn't have a ton of knitting progress this week, but the other thing I briefly worked on and finished or refinished is my linen top. So for those of you who've been with me for a while, I worked on a linen top and I finished it several weeks ago, and I talked about how I kind of wasn't entirely pleased with it. I didn't like the way it fit. I felt like maybe I didn't pick up enough stitches on the ribbing around the armholes, and it just sat on this couch back here where I used to sit and podcast for about 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, I don't know. It just sat while it was thinking about what it had done. And this weekend I was like, I'm cleaning up that couch. I had a bunch of stuff just laying on it. And I was like, I'm cleaning it up, and I saw it there, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna reknit it. I had a little bit left of the ball. And so I just pulled out the sleeve treatment that I had done, and I picked up and did it again. And I did it a little bit looser. I picked up a few more stitches, and I was really happy with it. And then I stuck at the top in the washing machine, because it is made of bamboo and linen, and it came out super soft and delightfully dreamy, and I put it on yesterday, and I'm much happier with it. So I will show you, and then I will talk about it. I will just give you a few quick details. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because I spent a lot of time on it as I was making it. So this is the, let me think about this. Yeah, this is the Esty top by Justina Lorkowska, who's Letty's Knits on Instagram. It is available on her website or on Ravelry. And it is this really kind of boxy summer top. She made hers in a wool linen blend. I made mine in a linen bamboo blend. And it starts at the top kind of with a contiguous sleeve shaping cast on where you work on kind of the neck and these beautiful lace panels that kind of sit a little bit forward on your shoulders. I mean, they're definitely a shoulder piece, but they sit kind of, the back of the lace panel sits kind of top of your shoulder, and then you can kind of see the lace panel on the front. And there's a little bit of short row shaping so that you kind of get a little bit of a drop neck in the front. And then it is basically a just boxy shaped, no shaping. You could add shaping if you wanted to. The one thing that is in here is there's kind of a faux seam down the sides that you create with a, let me see if I can show you this, a faux seam that you create down the sides with a purl stitch. So there is kind of a little bit of a marker on the sides, but in general, it's just a pretty boxy summery top. The yarn that I used is Treasure Goddess Bamboo Linen, or Linen Bamboo. It is one of her new blends, and she just started dyeing it this summer, and I believe she still has some in her shop. Christine is a good friend of mine and actually lives like literally just down the... I live on a small little cul-de-sac off a main street, and she lives down the main street a couple blocks, well, okay, down the main street a couple miles, and then like a block in the other direction. So she's super close to me. We're both out in the middle of nowhere. Anyway, she has lovely yarns. This was in her coral reef colorway. She designed all of these colorways. It's interesting. So plant fibers like bamboo and linen take the dye differently than... require a different set of dyes, but also take dye differently than wool and animal fibers. Wool and animal fibers tend to strike, so they can have really, really intense colors, and in general, the plant fiber colorways are a little bit more muted. So her first attempt at dyeing these and her first kind of paint box of colors for this season is very candy and kind of beachy oriented. I won't say pastel because I don't exactly think this is a pastel, but she's got a coral and a turquoise and a kind of sea green and a lavender and kind of a yellow, and to me they remind me of like fun hard candies or something in all different colors. And the really cool thing is that she designed all of these colors, and I think you could take 2 or 3 of them and turn them into a striped tee, and you could mix and match any from the set. She's also got a neutral in there. Anyway, so that is my SDT, and I'm going to take it with me this weekend to on my travels and wear it, and hopefully I'll get my husband to take a photo of me wearing it so I can show you what it looks like. The reason there has not been one until now was because I wasn't quite happy with it. The other thing I will tell you is the yarn does say hand wash only. However, linen and bamboo are the types of fibers that benefit from a machine washing and a drying. Linen, bamboo, flax, all of those fibers really get softer and more pliable the more they are worn and washed. And so while I realize it's kind of not totally recommend, it's not precisely what the dyer recommends. I did actually talk to her about it, and machine washing and drying these is fine. It didn't shrink at all. And it just made it even softer and more pliable and more lovely to wear. And of course, linen and bamboo are fabulous to wear in the summer. They're drapey, they're cool, they wick moisture away from the skin. And then the only other thing I will show you is just these were the arm treatments that I just redid. It was just 6 or 7 rounds of ribbing, and I didn't pick up enough stitches the first time, and so it was a little bit tight, and it made the whole top kind of fit very weird. And I think the combination of picking it up and doing it again, and washing it in the washing machine kind of finished it off and made it to something that I'm really, really excited to wear now. So that was just kind of a revisiting of something. I will tell you, sometimes you finish a project and you're just not that thrilled with it when you get done with it, and you have a bunch of choices. I mean, you can always pull it out, you can always give it to someone else who might like it, but sometimes the thing to do is to just set it aside for a little bit and think about it and mull it over and see if there's something you might be able to fix. I mean, really honestly, it took me a little over an hour to rip out these two. I hadn't woven in all my ends yet, so I just had to unpick the border on these and then rip out literally like 6 or 7 rounds and redo them, and I am so much happier with it now. So you know, sometimes you just need to take a little time, put something in a corner, let it think about what it's done, and then go back to it later and enjoy it. So I'm really pleased that I did that, and hopefully I'll have pictures for you soon. So let's talk about spinning. I realize I've told you that I didn't knit very much. It's been all about spinning, and now I've spent 26 minutes talking about knitting. So right now is Tour de Fleece. I've been watching Tour de France. Today actually is our first rest day. We have had 9 stages so far, and I've been spinning up a storm. And I don't know if it's because I just had lots of ambitions to get things done, or if I just wanted to do nothing but spin, or if I was kind of forward loading things because I'll be gone for 5 days. We're leaving on Thursday night, and I will be back on Monday. And so I'm going to be gone for several days and won't be at my wheels. And so I don't know whether I front loaded it for that or precisely what. So the first couple days I finished, I'm just going to show you everything that I've got, and then I'll talk about kind of what's still to come. So the first couple days I finished some singles that I actually started before the tour. I think I showed you this skein last week. I had just finished plying it, I think, and I hadn't washed it and thwacked it, and so now it has had its bath, and it is lovely. This is a colorway called Melody, and it is on organic Polworth, and it was dyed by Fat Cat Knits, and it reads primarily purple and turquoise, but it's also got little bits of green and yellow and a little bit of pink and a few other colors in there. It's really nice and squishy. I haven't calculated the final yardage. What I decided to do with this batch of yarns, because I would like to take photos of them all together at the end as my entire Tour de Fleece, is I am just going to wait and I will list all of the Tour de Fleece spins that I plan to list in my shop at one time. The Tour de Fleece ends on Saturday the 23rd, so my guess is I will put them up on the 24th or 25th, and so they will all hit the shop then. So I haven't done all of the final weights and measures, but this one will likely be between 350 and 400 yards, and it is, like I said, it's organic Polworth. It's super soft and squishy, and it's really just a lot of fun colors. The next spin that I worked on for a couple days was a braid of Hello Yarn fibers. It was the December, I believe, 2022 colorway, and it was called Pastille, which is, it's P-A-S-T-I-L-L-E-S, and that's the French pronunciation. It made me laugh because I was spinning a French braid during the tour, and it the word means candy, and this was definitely candy-like. Some of the colors that came out when I was spinning it almost looked like macaron, which I really thought was kind of fun. They had these like really kind of like pale pink ones, and of course there's lots and lots of yellow in here. There's brown for like chocolate. There was kind of a dark cherry / burgundy colorway that reminds me of like red velvet, and it was just very bright and fun. And the braid actually turned out becoming a lot more yellow than I thought I was going to, but I still think it's kind of fun and summery looking, and so that is that one. This was a, let me think about this. This was a Rambouillet braid. Rambouillet? Yes, this was a Rambouillet braid. And so it is also squishy and lovely and probably around the same length. I think I've been spinning roughly. So my default spin is generally kind of a heavy fingering or a lightweight sport. And so these would be good for socks. They would be good for shawls. Usually I get between 350 and 400 yards, sometimes 340, but they could be good for socks or winter accessories or some shawlettes. So they're kind of fun. I just love the colors on this one. So the third spin that I undertook was actually a club fiber. I joined the Northbound Knitting 3-month club this year, and this one was merino cashmere, which is lovely. It's a 70% merino, 30% cashmere, and the colorway is cytoplasm. And I had spun merino in the past. I'm sorry, not merino. Of course I've spun merino in the past. I had spun cashmere blends in the past, and in general I find them very challenging to spin. Cashmere is very short stapled and I find it very, very slippery. And so I had not really enjoyed spinning cashmere in the past. I had found it just really hard to spin nicely and evenly because it kind of clumped together and it was hard to draft and it was slippery, and I needed to add lots of twist, and for some reason this blend was really kind of optimal. And of course it's in my favorite kind of teals. It's got lots of like a little bit of really dark teal, and then it's also got a little bit of like yellow green. Cytoplasm is the perfect word for it. It's really fun. It also reminds me just of like ocean and kelp and that kind of thing. But this one was really fun, and it is extra special soft because it's got the cashmere in it. This one you would definitely want to wear close to the skin, and I think I got about the same wraps. This might have spun up just a little bit thicker than the other two. I can't remember, but I've been going in a pretty decent groove, and so this is the third skein that I have finished for the tour, which is not bad considering we're only 9 days in. I didn't bring with me, but I have worked on a couple other things. Well, I'll show you a few things. I have done 6 bobbins so far of yarn for chickens. I am spinning for another pinstripe chicken that I will start to knit shortly. And I spun 4 bobbins of white, and I currently have 2 bobbins of black, and I would like to spin another 2 bobbins of black. I think maybe that's going to be tomorrow's spin. And that will give me 4 of each, which should be enough to get started. So that is my goal before I leave. I will likely spin maybe 2 more so I'd like to spin 2 more black before I leave on vacation. After I get back, I will likely probably spin 2 more of black and 2 more of white. I don't know if I'll get those done during the tour, but I still, I need to sort of finish those up so I have enough to knit another chicken. I also was really excited though, because we use the same black and the same white all the time. So I don't have to worry very much about, so the white is actually natural, and I believe it's been washed and, well, it might be bleached, but it's like, it's a natural color, it's not dyed white, and then the black definitely is dyed, but I found a bag of extra yarn that I spun the last time I did one of these chickens, and I have 3 or 4 skeins of white in there and 2 or 3 skeins of black, so I don't need to spin quite as much this time because I think I have enough left over, but we shall see. I will be continuing to do that in the upcoming weeks. So I did not bring those because I didn't think that was very exciting, but I do have 6 other skeins. And generally for the chicken yarn, what I have been doing is I just do a rough spin. I'm aiming for generally like about a worsted weight single. It can be bulky in points. The chickens are very, they're very unlike anything else that I spin or knit for, and they can be a little bit freeform and not super, like I definitely try and make sure that I don't overspin my singles and ply too tightly and those kinds of things on my skeins, and that's just not really a factor when I spin for the chickens, because by the time I wash them and knit them and block them, and the thing about the chickens is that when I'm knitting coverings for the chickens, like what is supposed to approximate feathers, we are making these as sort of pieces of, I don't want to say upholstery exactly, but we definitely want more form and structure to what we're doing. So for instance, I don't want to put a garment on me that's a thick bulky spin that has a little those extra little coils in them, and because it's rough and it doesn't feel good to wear and it doesn't drape nicely over my body and show you know, human form. I would never want to like wear upholstery fabric, but these we like them a lot more sculptural, and it helps if they can hold their own shape and they are a little bit stiffer. So the yarn that I spin for them doesn't have to be as, I don't want to say as nice, but it doesn't have to have as much of a good feel. So that's kind of where I am with that. A couple other things that I have been working on in terms of spinning. I used to spin and ply from center pole balls. Well, okay, not spin. I used to spin my singles all at once onto one bobbin, and then I would wind those singles into a center pole ball, and then I would ply from the inside and the outside of the cake. And I liked doing that because it made sure that I used every single bit of the fiber, because at the very end it basically folds on itself and you end up with a loop and you're done. Like you get every last little bit of fiber off of that bobbin. The thing that frustrated me about it is sometimes my singles get tangled, and I couldn't always use all of the singles because sometimes they'd knot or they'd just get super tangled near the end, and it was really kind of a pain. So about 2 years ago, I think, I switched back to dividing my fiber, spinning it on 2 bobbins, and then plying it together. Again, the reason that I liked the center pole balls was because I never had anything left over on the bobbins. Quite frequently, when I spin, I have a little bit left over on one bobbin or the other. And typically we're talking 5 to 10 grams of fiber, but it is extra yardage that I would like to be able to use. So sometimes what I do is I take that little bit off of the bobbin and I wind it into a center pole ball and try and finish plying out of the last little bit that's there. And very often that gets tangled. So what ends up happening is that quite often when I spin, I have a little ball of fiber left over, and I have one right here, so I will show you. I have a little ball left over. I actually have a couple of them here. So I have little balls of fiber left over. I have 3. And these are very, very small. These are just absolute little bits that are left over as singles on my bobbin. And this one was a little bit more, and it's in fun colors. And so oftentimes I have these little leftover balls, and I stash them everywhere, like everywhere. I have a mug on my desk. I have like several of them over in a dish over there, and I just have all these little bits and bobs. And every so often I decide that I want to try plying them up into something. So I actually managed to get like 70 yards of yarn left over from all the little bits and bobs. What happened was, as I was plying, I think it was as I was plying this one, I had a little bit left over on one bobbin, and I was like, oh, maybe I should grab another color and start plying that. And you know what happens? So I had a little bit left on the bobbin, so I added a strand from one of these balls of fiber. I just picked the strand and I added in the way I would as if something broke, and I continued to ply, and I got to the end of what was on the bobbin, but then I still had like a ball left. I still had more. And so I was like, oh, well, let me grab another little ball. And then I added that one in, and then I finished one of those, or finished this one, and then I added another one in. And so at the end of it all, I had about 70 yards of fiber. This has not been washed and thwacked. This is all different fibers. Some of it's a little overspun, some of it's a little underspun, and it's just a variety of things. But it is the little bits and bobs that I had left, and so I have another 70 yards of fiber that I just managed to ply. So the last spin that I have started, and I plan to finish before I leave, but I won't be able to show you, is another Hello Yarn spin. This is called Goosebumps, and it is really, really luscious. It is 23 micron merino, and the smaller the micron count, the finer the fiber is. So 23 is about, I think, middle of merino. I'd have to look again to be sure. But it is soft. It also was kind of a gray natural, like all of this is dyed over a, I believe it was a bunch of natural fibers blended. So the base was roughly gray looking. It wasn't like bleached white. Like a lot of times, like when Adrian dyed this one, same dyer. When Adrian dyed this one, the base was kind of a bleached white, and so it took the colors absolutely brilliantly, and that's the only color that's there. And there were a few little bits of the braid that were undyed, and so you see they come off as white in the, they come off looking white in the plying. This one is actually gray underneath. So when there's not a lot of dye on it, you end up with like little bits of gray here. And it also just gives it kind of a more over muted colorway. This one is kind of a darkish rainbow colorway. It's got dark reds and oranges and blues. And there are areas where it looks almost where the red and blue overlap and they almost look purple. And you can see there's like a darker orange and a lighter orange. Anyway, I am working on the second bobbin of this, and then I will hope to ply them before I leave. And so again, that's Hello Yarn in Goosebumps 23 micron merino, and this will be another one for the shop. All of the ones I have showed you so far are for the shop. I have one braid that I plan to spin that I might keep for myself, and I don't know where that one is. But for the most part, I think my tour spins are going to be to go up in the shop. I'm just having fun alternating between different dyers, and I'm spinning fairly consistently, and I'm spinning most of these as fractal spins, which just means I divide the braid in half, and then I divide one half into smaller strips, and then one half into larger strips, so I get longer color repeats, and then I'm plying them together. And it's funny because the other half of the bobbin for this one has much more like purple and gray in it. So the bobbin looks very purple and gray. And so I think it's going to give me kind of a muted rainbow look. So that is the last spin that I'm working on. I did bring one other braid. I probably will not start it before my trip, which means I will not even have started it by the next time I see you, but I just thought I'd show you what's coming up next. Next, I'm going to use a braid from Kim Dye's Fiber. This was, I believe, from last month. I think this was the June fiber. Kim Dye's Yarn started in the pandemic doing monthly colorways, and for a while she was doing monthly colorways that only shops could order, so that you would have to go to your local it was kind of a genius system, because she would do a monthly colorway that only shops could order, and shops could take pre-orders if they wanted to for that colorway. So she was driving business into local yarn stores, particularly in the pandemic when they might be closed. And she was also building business for herself, because then she was sort of guaranteeing herself. Pre-orders are basically guaranteed wholesale orders. So it was a really nice symbiotic relationship, and she has continued elements of it. I don't think she's really doing pre-orders anymore, and I don't think she's doing I don't know if they're entirely exclusive to shops. I think you can buy them on her website as well if you don't have a local yarn shop. And honestly, I cannot remember. I think I bought this one. I bought this one from my local yarn shop. But sometimes if she has a color that I like and my local yarn shop doesn't have a pre-order, I'll just buy it directly from her. So this is Kim Dye's Yarn, and that's upside down. This is Kim Dye. I was like, I knew it was going to be backwards, but this is Kim Dye's Yarn, and this one is called, it's because I was looking at this. This is called Midnight Garden. It is 100% Targhee, which is kind of a fluffy, almost merino-like blend, and like I said, it's called Midnight Garden, and it has lots of greens and purples, and it's a little bit muted. It looks like maybe the base was a natural base rather than a bleached white base, because I can sort of see streaks of where it might be gray. And so that is another one of the braids that I'll be spinning during the tour. I still have a couple more put aside. I still have a whole bunch more chicken yarn I could spin, and I'm just going to keep going and see how much I can do. I am spinning until the official tour end date, which is Sunday, July 23rd. And that is sort of what we'll be doing in the Tour de Fleece group. However, if you are interested, the Tour de Femmes avec Zwift, which is the women's tour, is running for 8 days. It starts on the 23rd and it will finish on the 30th. And I will be watching that as well, and I will probably continue to spin. Wes will be out of town for that week, so I will be on my own. So my guess is I will continue my breakneck pace at spinning and try and keep that going through the end of the month. Then when we get to August, I have Miles' birthday sweater to do, and I'm sure I will have more samples to do. I have some yarn for samples, but I don't actually know what the next couple of samples are going to be yet. They sent me a box of this is what happens. They send me a box of yarn, and then eventually they decide on patterns. So thank you for sticking with me. This was a long episode. I actually had a lot to show you and a lot to talk about. I hope it wasn't too long for you. I try not to keep you for excess chatter. I try only to sort of chat about what I'm working on and what's going on. I hope that you are doing well, that you are staying healthy, that you are enjoying the season, that you aren't too hot or too cold, and that you're enjoying some great crafty time. So I will see you in a week, and I'm sure I will have plenty to report on my travels. As I say every time, happy knitting, happy spinning, happy sipping, and I'll see you next time. Bye.